What happens when a Hollywood titan storms off a late-night stage in a blaze of fury? You're about to witness the shocking moment Brad Pitt walked off Jimmy Kimmel Live. A confrontation that stunned the audience, went viral within minutes, and ignited a firestorm across social media. Before we dive into the chaos, hit subscribe and drop a comment with your thoughts on Brad Pitt. Let's get into it. It began like any other episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. The Hollywood studio was packed, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. Tonight's guest? Brad Pitt, A-list royalty, beloved for his charm, respected for his talent. He was there to promote his latest project, a bold sci-fi thriller that had critics and fans alike talking. The producers expected charisma, insights, into the film's sweeping themes, maybe a few light-hearted anecdotes. Jimmy Kimmel, a seasoned host with a talent for balancing humor and conversation, was prepped and ready. But behind the scenes, something felt off. Brad had arrived at the studio earlier that day, flanked by a small entourage. Normally relaxed and playful, he appeared tense, focused but withdrawn. Crew members noted that he seemed distracted, on edge. Sources close to the production revealed the cause. Pitt was exhausted from a relentless press tour and frustrated with media outlets, twisting his environmental advocacy into political controversy. He made one thing crystal clear during the pre-show briefing. He was there to talk about the film, not his private life or social media backlash. Kimmel's team agreed, but tension simmered beneath the surface. Backstage, Kimmel reviewed his notes. He'd been briefed on Pitt's requests, but wasn't overly concerned. Their previous interviews had gone smoothly. Light jabs, big laughs, good chemistry. He figured he could still work in a few playful remarks about Pitt's high profile, activism without crossing the line. Then the lights went up. Kimmel opened with his usual monologue, witty, topical, sharp. The audience roared. The energy was electric. When he announced Brad Pitt, the cheers were deafening. Pitt walked out, flashing that signature smile, waving to the crowd. For a moment, it seemed like the tension had melted away. He took his seat, across from Kimmel. The interview began. At first, it went smoothly. Kimmel opened with questions about the film, its ambitious storyline, its vision of humanity's future. Pitt lit up, passionately discussing the themes of survival and human resilience. The crowd was locked in. Then came the pivot. Kimmel, with a sly grin, brought up a recent viral post criticizing Pitt's environmental efforts, framing it as a light-hearted jab. But the smile dropped from Pitt's face, leaning forward, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. He said, "I'm here to talk about the movie, not social media drama." The audience laughed nervously. At first, it felt like banter. But Pitt wasn't smiling. Kimmel tried to recover, shifting back to the film. He asked about the futuristic sets, the immersive production design. Pitt answered, but something had shifted. His tone was cooler, his answers shorter. The spark was fading. Then Kimmel took another risk. He asked about the parallels between the film's themes and Pitt's real-life activism, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, Brad was a hero both on and off the screen. That's when it happened. Pitt paused, looked at Kimmel, then, with controlled intensity, said, "You think this is a joke? I've spent years working on these issues, trying to use my voice for something bigger than myself, and you want to turn it into a punchline." The studio went silent. Even the band stopped playing. Kimmel, stunned, tried to respond, but Pitt was already standing. He looked out at the audience and said, "I came here tonight to talk about art, about the future, about hope, not to be turned into tabloid fodder, not to be mocked under the pretense of comedy. Security moved closer, unsure whether to intervene. But Pitt didn't need them. With one last look at the camera, he said, "Respect the people who try to build something meaningful. Because this," he gestured around the set, "this isn't entertainment. It's noise." And with that, Brad Pitt walked off Jimmy Kimmel Live. The cameras lingered on Kimmel's stunned expression for several awkward seconds before cutting to commercial. By the time the episode ended, clips of the walk-off were flooding social media. Debates erupted online. Was Brad Pitt overreacting? Or was this a moment of truth in an industry obsessed with image over substance? Whatever your take, this wasn't just another celebrity meltdown. It was a rare, raw moment of authenticity. Pitt's demeanor shifted. He cut Kimmel off, voice steady, but razor-sharp. "I asked to keep this about the film, not my personal causes." The audience stirred. Some chuckled awkwardly, unsure if it was a scripted bit. Others sat silent, sensing the tension rising. Kimmel, catching the friction, tried to pivot. "Tell us about working with your co-stars," he offered, flashing a grin. But Pitt wasn't moving on. He leaned in, eyes locked on Kimmel. "I came here to talk about the work, the art, not to have my advocacy twisted into a punchline or a soundbite." The room went still. In the control booth, producers exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the Brad Pitt segment they had planned. He was supposed to roll with the jokes, not challenge the format live, on air. They were barely 6 minutes in, and the segment was already slipping off the rails. Kimmel, now walking a tightrope, tried to recover. "I was just pointing out how much your impact means to people," he said. "That's something fans admire." But Pitt wasn't buying it. He spoke calmly but with purpose, about the years he'd spent building a career rooted in substance, choosing projects that told stories worth telling. And yet, time after time, interviews circled back to his activism, often twisted, sensationalized, weaponized for clicks. The crowd listened intently. Some clapped in quiet support. Others sat frozen, wide-eyed. Backstage, phones were already buzzing. Clips of the moment were hitting social media in real time. Debate was erupting. Was Pitt setting a healthy boundary or overreacting on live TV? Producers whispered into Kimmel's earpiece, urging him to steer things back to the movie, get control, regain the rhythm. But Kimmel made a critical misstep. Trying to salvage the energy, he leaned into controversy. "There's been some chatter online. People calling your environmental work performative. Want to set the record straight?" He thought he was giving Pitt an opening. Instead, he stepped on a landmine. Pitt's expression turned to stone. He didn't raise his voice, but the quiet intensity in his words cut through the air. "I told you where I stood. I came here to discuss something I care about deeply. And you turned it into clickbait. That's not respect. That's exploitation." The audience gasped. Then, applause. Scattered at first. Then louder. Some cheered. Others watched in stunned silence. The studio was electric. The moment had gone off script, and there was no turning back. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones were up, capturing every second. In the control booth, chaos erupted. Producers argued over whether to cut to commercial, fingers hovering over the cue. On stage, Kimmel was visibly shaken. He tried to laugh it off. "Hey, I didn't mean to pry," he said, voice wavering. But Pitt wasn't buying the deflection. The confrontation was heating up. The studio buzzed with raw energy. Pitt's earlier accusation of disrespect still echoed in the air, leaving Kimmel scrambling for footing. The audience was glued, wide-eyed, phones recording. Every second now, part of the digital bloodstream. Kimmel tried to salvage what was left of the segment. "Let's talk about the movie. Those special effects looked intense," he offered, pivoting hard. Pitt played along, briefly. He spoke about the visual complexity of the sci-fi thriller, but his tone was clipped. The passion was gone, replaced by cool restraint. The tension hadn't eased. It had merely paused. Kimmel, sensing the segment, was slipping again, tried for safer ground. "What was your favorite moment on set?" he asked, aiming for charm. But Pitt wasn't done. Mid-answer, he stopped, turned to Kimmel. "Let me be clear before we pretend this didn't happen." Kimmel froze. Pitt looked out at the audience, his voice low but firm. "I came here to share a film I believe in, not to have my advocacy framed as controversy." He spoke about the years he'd devoted to environmental work, the hope behind it, the intention, and how media outlets, time and again, spun that work into easy headlines. "It's not performance, it's conviction, and I'm tired of having it cheapened." Silence, then a wave of applause, some spontaneous, some stunned. Backstage, producers were in full scramble mode. The director was already signaling a commercial break, but the cameras kept rolling. Kimmel, trying to steady the ship, said, "I admire what you do, Brad. I was trying to connect the work to the world." But Pitt cut in. "Respect means listening. I told you my boundary, and you crossed it." The room gasped. Some clapped. Others just stared. Kimmel's usual polish cracked. He tried again. "Let's focus on the movie." But Pitt was, already rising. The gesture alone sent a jolt through the studio. He unclipped his mic, deliberate and calm. "I'm not here to be a prop in someone else's narrative." The audience roared, some cheering, others stunned. Producers shouted into headsets, but it was too late. Pitt turned to the audience one last time. "You deserve stories about ideas, not manufactured drama." Then he walked off. Kimmel called after him, "We can stick to the film." But Pitt didn't look back. He vanished backstage just as the director finally cut to commercial. The studio was in chaos. Audience members buzzed. Phones lit up with clips spreading across social media like wildfire. Backstage, Pitt's team moved quickly, escorting him toward the exit. A few crew members offered quiet apologies. Pitt simply shook his head. "I'm not angry. I'm just done being misrepresented." He left without another word. Outside, paparazzi, already tipped off by the viral moment, swarmed the exit. Cameras flashed as his car pulled away. Within minutes, headlines flooded entertainment sites. Pitt walks out. Brad versus Kimmel. Actor or activist? Some praised his stand. Others called him overly sensitive. Pitt's team stayed silent, focusing on redirecting attention to the film. But inside the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio, the mood was fractured. Kimmel sat alone, staring at the empty chair beside him, a glaring reminder of what had just unfolded. The control booth debated what to do next. Some urged Kimmel to address it. Others wanted to move on. When the show resumed, Kimmel faced the crowd. "Live TV, folks. It gets real sometimes." He didn't say Pitt's name. Instead, he introduced the next guest, a comedian meant to lighten the mood. But the damage was done. The audience clapped, politely, but the energy was gone, replaced by the buzz of phones and whispering spectators still digesting the moment. The segment fell flat. Producers cut the musical performance, ending the show early. Backstage, Kimmel sat quietly, the weight of the night settling in. They all knew. This wasn't just a tough interview. It was a cultural flashpoint, and its impact was just beginning to ripple. Producers huddled in the control booth, reviewing footage and assessing the damage to the show's reputation. Jimmy Kimmel had built his brand on relatability and humor, but his persistence in questioning Brad Pitt's activism was now being slammed as tone-deaf, even disrespectful. After the odd show, Kimmel met with his staff, visibly shaken. Sources say he believed Pitt had overreacted, but he also admitted reluctantly that he may have misjudged the actor's boundaries. The team debated releasing a statement, but ultimately decided to wait it out, hoping the controversy would fade by morning. It didn't. By sunrise, the incident was dominating headlines. Entertainment pundits dissected every angle. Some praised Pitt for demanding respect. Others defended Kimmel's topical approach. Meanwhile, clips of the confrontation were everywhere, racking up millions of views, fueling debates, dividing public opinion. Outside the studio, the fallout widened. Pitt's fans rallied online, applauding his stand against media sensationalism. His new sci-fi thriller surged in ticket sales, many linking the spike directly to the renewed spotlight. But not everyone was impressed. Rival talk show hosts took shots, calling Pitt thin-skinned. The moment had become a cultural flashpoint, reigniting old questions. Where's the line between entertainment and exploitation? Between journalism and provocation? Inside Kimmels, camp. The scrutiny was intense. Viewers questioned whether his show's format needed to evolve. The night was over, but the consequences had only begun to unfold. What followed was a reckoning. Kimmel's team eventually issued a brief, carefully worded statement, reaffirming the show's commitment to respecting its guests, without naming Pitt. It was a strategic move, an attempt to de-escalate. On the next episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live, the host addressed the controversy in his monologue. Lightly, "Some stars," he joked, "take their missions more seriously than my questions." The audience laughed. He wished Pitt well, but offered no apology. The message was clear. They were moving on. The crowd responded with support, but online the divide only deepened. Heated threads flooded social media. Team Pitt versus Team Kimmel. Meanwhile, Pitt remained silent. No public appearances, no online statements. Sources close to him said he wasn't angry, just disappointed, not in the backlash, but in the fact that the conversation had shifted away from his work. Behind the scenes, his team doubled down on promoting the film, booking interviews that focused strictly on the project, avoiding anything personal. The strategy worked. The movie broke box office records, with many analysts crediting the controversy for its viral visibility. Clips of Pitt's speech about respect and boundaries continued to trend, gaining millions of views. His fans saw authenticity. His critics, still skeptical, painted him as overreactive. Late-night comedians joked, but the moment had staying power. For Jimmy Kimmel, it was a rare stumble in a long career of managing high-profile interviews. Some praised his calm under fire. Others called his insistence reckless. The show's ratings stayed steady, but producers quietly made changes. Pre-show briefings were overhauled, boundaries clearly outlined. They had learned something. Maybe everyone had. For Brad Pitt, the walkout was both a risk and a declaration. His decision to speak out and walk away resonated. The film soared. Award buzz followed. The narrative shifted. He wasn't prickly. He was principled. His team declined Kimmel's invitation to return. Instead, Pitt chose platforms that aligned with his message, where the focus was the work, not the spectacle. The incident sparked wider conversations across the industry. Should talk shows evolve? Should celebrity interviews dig deep or stay light? Should stars be expected to play along, or should they take control of their own stories? The clash became a reference point, an example cited in media panels, op-eds, and interviews about the shifting relationship between Hollywood and the press. Eventually, the headlines faded, but the lesson remained. That night wasn't just a dramatic walkout. It was a moment of cultural clarity, a confrontation between expectation and autonomy, a reminder that even in entertainment, respect still matters. Brad Pitt's exit wasn't just a moment of defiance. It was a stand for control over his narrative. And Jimmy Kimmel? He learned that even in a world built on laughs, some moments are too real to joke away. What did you think? Drop a comment below and let me know. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. See you in the next video.